Hey, welcome to our May edition of Mom and Pop Wine Shop's Wine Club interview. It's sort of our stand-in for being able to have winemakers visit the shop in person to pour for you. So we are we're going to ask Leah Jorgensen, who is our featured winemaker this month for this beautiful Cabernet Franc, to join the conversation. So give me just a minute here. I'm gonna send a little invite. Get her on the line. She's waiting to speak to you and answer all your questions.
Hi.
There she is. Hi. How's it going?
It's so far so good. So far so good, if you know what I mean. I know you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely. We were discussing our children busting in on our conversations, so that's okay. The more the merrier, right?
Right.
So what would you like to talk about? I feel like these conversations can be more surprising when I don't set the parameters too tightly and I just ask you what's on your mind.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hello. Uh-oh. It's a dark there. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Leah Jorgensen. I'm a winemaker based out of Newburgh, Oregon.
Yeah.
And I live here, but I don't buy fruit from here. Actually, I get most of my fruit from Southern Oregon, from the Applegate Valley and Rogue Valley, with a little bit of Willamette Valley Gamay, I should add. And so tonight, gosh, let me think. It's been manic because we, like many people with COVID, we've been trying to get clever on how we pivot and how we, connect with customers. And for a long time, prior to having my baby, who's now 2, he's still my baby, but prior, I would do tastings by appointment. And then the first year that I had Ivor, it was hard for me to sort of balance new mom, winemaker, and everything else going on. So we didn't do as many tastings in person and really relied on our distribution sales. And then COVID happened. And then we had some really great learning from, just a year of chaos basically, and being at home and still being married and still making it through.
That's right.
What happens when you're stuck at home? And, but we decided to use our home space, this year in 2021 to bring back people for tastings by appointment. So we're hashing that out right now. I have someone working for me, but you asked what's on my mind. I have furniture coming left and right now. It's crazy. That's what's on my mind. I literally, before we sat down, I had a delivery arrive for one of our, for some seating out there. And it's just funny because my 2-year-old now is obsessed with deliveries coming. He's like, it's a delivery truck,
Oh, yeah.
So that's my reality right now. It's just a lot of deliveries and trying to create a space here that is safe for our family, but then also safe for small groups, by groups, I mean a couple couples to come out and take.
So when do you think that will happen, and where exactly is that?
We are launching it Memorial Day weekend. So we have 4 days over Memorial Day weekend. I believe we are booked on Saturday, but Shannon, who's our direct sales manager, she will be conducting the tastings on Friday, Sunday, and Monday that weekend as well. So there's a few more openings. Because we haven't been open, they've been filling up fast, which is great. But those are the days that are still available if people wanted to come by. We're in Newburgh. I'm not gonna throw out the address because we like to let people know as they come.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, all of us can relate to having to change our practices. I am classic Gen X, being dragged kicking and screaming into the Instagram realm.
Yep.
you know, and I really do miss being able to engage with people one on one, and just I think it creates an atmosphere that is a little bit missing in video. But boy, it's really incredible just to be able to connect with people in a really spontaneous and kind of easy way on Instagram. So I'm really glad that we've been able to do this. And, you know, I really look forward to, you know, someday when we figure out how to re-welcome people into our tiny space.
Right.
So
I know. Someone just asked what the tasting fees are. If I may, it's $20 a person for our classic tasting.
yeah.
That's the regular lineup of current releases. And then if you want to taste any of the library wines or reserve wines that Shannon's going to open, that's an additional $10. And then we also have what's called our fancy tasting, and we're working with a local duo of sisters. I believe I haven't confirmed yet, but people can get these beautifully locally made charcuterie boards boxes. Basically, they're boxes so they can take them to go, which is cool. And that'll up it to $50 a person. They're really quite beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for the question.
Oh yeah. I mean, and your library wines would be really, really attractive. I mean, the wines that you make are so built for cellaring. It's just incredible having the opportunity to taste these wines back to back in these successive vintages has been really, really cool.
Thank you.
What was the genesis of the Cabernet Franc Blanc, if I may ask?
Yeah, that was actually the first wine I ever made for myself. So it was the Genesis, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to making my own wine, I knew Cab Franc was going to be the main focus, the main attraction. But I knew I wanted to start off with something that was really going to make a statement, like, hey, this is something really different. Check it out. And not different to be arbitrarily different, but to just catch some attention on, like, look at Oregon, look what we can do here.
Mm-hmm.
And I had worked with a lot of Loire Valley producers prior to making wine in Oregon. And I had sold a lot of Loire Valley wines when I was in Washington, D.C., my hometown. I worked for a distributor that represented the Joe Dresner book. One moment.
Yeah.
It was going to happen. We've got a mascot.
Hi.
That's Ivor.
Ivor.
He makes an appearance every now and again. All right, Papa has to work, okay? Can you say bye-bye? No, not now. Mommy has to work. I'll see you in a little bit, though. And he's off. That's how it is. He's just like in and out. It's like this little fairy coming in and out. But yeah, I worked for this distributor in DC, and we had the Joe Dresner book in our portfolio, and the Louis Dresner book. And I got to work with Joe Dresner before moving out here. And I loved those wines. I loved the Bernard Baudry wines, and of course, Clos Rochard and Clos Roche Blanche. And for people who taste my wines, they see where I've made connections to those. Hi, I'm seeing Zach saying Ivor. That's cute. Hi, Zach. But it's kind of, it was an aha moment for me, if you will. And my boss was also from the Loire Valley. So in the back of my mind, the wheels were always turning, like I wanted to make Cab Franc. My dad's from Eugene, Oregon. I moved out here for a Pinot camp. And anyways, by the time I was working at Shea Wine Cellars, and I knew I was going to like make a tiny amount of wine. I was able to contact Chris. And I'm totally doing a new mom blank right here. Chris at Roots. Chris Berg. Sorry, Chris, if you're out there. Chris Berg at Roots Wine Company. And he basically hooked me up for 750 pounds worth of Cab Franc. So that's all I asked for, which is basically a barrel's worth of Cab Franc. And he got it for me from Lake Lane Vineyard in Walla Walla, which is of the McKibbins family. So hold on, Bubba. Mommy's working. Yeah, you can take that. Good job. Take that ticket. That's right. He's working. And anyways, I got that wine, and I knew from the get-go, there were producers that were, only a handful were actually making still white Cab Franc. but there are plenty that were using it in base wines for Cremant de Loire. So either blend Chenin Blanc or Chardonnay, or as a rosé, like in Saumur. Oh gosh, I'm just hoping it doesn't explode. My husband's like home any second now. You're doing it, bud. You know, it's like that.
It's real life.
It's real life. Yeah. It's funny. You're so kind. Thank you for being so understanding.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, so I knew, loving some of those wines and having experience making white Pinot Noir here in Oregon, I knew that there was a connection to make a white Cab Franc, not arbitrarily. I mean, it's not like, I don't think you should just make a white wine out of any red grape. I think that there's two things that really need to be there: acidity and a little tannin structure, but certainly the acidity. And the component of those two, I think, you know, if you're making a rosé, will give it a nice color. If you're making it a still white, a Blanc de Cabernet Franc, if you will, that's still, it just made sense to me to use a varietal that it's been done before. So I can't really take the credit for being the first person to make a white Cab Franc, but there's only a handful who were doing it in the Loire Valley. So definitely the first person in the U.S. to do a still white Cab Franc.
I wonder too, like in tasting both the red and the white, in my experience, you possibly get to know the grape better, maybe just by playing with it in these different iterations, and you're able to express both sides almost better because you're doing both and with different ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, especially when you think about cooking as well. It's very similar. Like, you get more familiar with certain ingredients the more you play with them, and you can expression. I think it's very similar in that respect. Yes, I mean, I literally make Cab Franc every way you can have it right now, except for sparkling, which I swore I would never say never. I made a sparkling Gamay in 2017 by accident. But mommy's working. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I'll look at it later for sure. Yeah, good job. Can you go finish what you're doing? No, of course not.
It's okay.
But in any case, yeah, it was. I think when you play around with it, I make a rosé of Cab Franc, a white Cab Franc, obviously a red, and then I do reserve versions of the wine.
Yeah.
So in using different barrel regimes and different practices, yeah, you really do become more familiar with a varietal. We are exploring making a sparkling Cab Franc white and rosé, and making that part of the program, and just really sweeping it across the board with Cab Franc.
Yeah.
And then any other varietal I make is going to be really, really small lots available to Wine Club first, and then a little bit will get out in the market, you know, like grandfathered in with special accounts, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Sounds fantastic. So in terms of cooking, with this 2019 that we have featured in the Wine Club, I wanted to be sure to ask for someone who requested, what would be, you know, what would you like to cook with this? And I'm going to ask you then a corollary question after that.
Sure. You know, the wonderful thing about Cabernet Franc is it goes with everything. It really has such a wide appeal for different foods, and in terms of regional food from all over the globe. I mean, you know, my mom, when I first started making Cab Franc, at first she was like, why are you making Cab Franc? She's like Italian, so she thinks I'm going to make Italian varietals, of course. And I'm like, Mom, they make a lot of Cab Franc in Italy. But so that's my point. Like, Cab Franc is well planted all across the globe. It's not this, like, you know, obscure varietal that's like Blau Frankish or something. You know what I mean? It's a very well known and planted grape. People just don't think of it as a standalone as much as they do as a blending grape. And it's so much more than a blending grape. And so when I think of just the regional appeal of Cab Franc all over the globe, and where it does really well, like in France and Italy. So when I think of France and the Loire Valley in particular, like I love this wine with like roast chicken and potatoes with rosemary, like just that very simple, you know, Loire style farm cooking. Also smoked trout, um, or lightly filleted trout is wonderful. And here, I might change that with steelhead because that's really cool and fun. But I love smoked fish, and I love to kind of play with my Nordic heritage too, with a lot of smoked fish and Cab Franc. It really can be quite beautiful together. But then Italy, right? I mean, like there's so many pastas and pizzas that go so well with Cab Franc, whether you're playing around with boar or mushrooms or whatever, because you can also get sort of that foresty floor, like Pinot Noir component to Cab Franc. So I love anything basically over fire, smoked, grilled, um, pan-seared,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think you should tell your mom too, for me, that one of the best pairings I ever had that was one of the most surprising pairings was I had a black squid ink pasta with Cabernet Franc, and it was
Gorgeous.
unreal.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. I've had that pairing as well. That's gorgeous. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and I would echo all of the comments about the food with a char. I mean, for people to understand, what, this concept of pyrazines and this kind of peppery aspect, it's so fun to just char peppers over your grill, and you're immediately drawn into like the primary aromas of those kind
Yeah.
of nervy Cabernet Francs.
Yeah.
For sure. So then, what would be your since we're having, both of us have had proud mama moments in these interviews, and I find myself, I used to just love to cook, and oh yeah, I'm gonna make my fresh pasta, but then I find myself actually just yanking open the freezer and pulling out some convenience food, from Trader Joe's or something. Speaking
Totally.
of smoked trout.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so what's your junk food pairing with this wine?
My junk food pair, so good. That's so good. That's a great question. I I just want to interject for a second. I worked in a little wine shop. It's not really little. It started off little, but it got bought out by a New York um, chain called Bestsellers. I don't know if you ever heard of Bestsellers.
No.
They were really big in the 90s, Gen X. They were big in the 90s, and I worked there in the 90s and early 2000. Early 2000. Anyways, we would do these events. Their whole premise was everything in the store was $30 or less, and they were great finds, amazing finds from all around the world. And so we would do every Saturday when we would open up the shop, we would do like really like street cred, like easy breezy pairings you wouldn't even like think about, like just when you say fast food, those kinds of food,
Yeah.
snacks. And my favorite, we did honeycomb, the cereal. Yeah, with I think a Torontes, it was like a sweet dessert wine.
Crazy.
It was so good. It was so weird and so good. And we did that kind of stuff all the time. So I love that question because it's like just foods you wouldn't, on a tasting note necessarily, or maybe you would. maybe
Yeah.
maybe you are that winemaker. So I'm dodging here for a little bit.
That's
Okay.
okay. That's
What
okay.
I have Franc. I mean, what are my gosh?
Yeah, guilty pleasures.
Yeah. Well, truly, I mean, I love dark chocolate and cacao. But see, this is the thing about when you say I'm a holistic nutritionist too. So like
Right.
I've literally cleared out my closet. So I mean, everything's like I get really healthy versions of the guilty stuff. But I'm trying to think. I mean, I could say maybe not snack, but fast food. Definitely like tacos, right? And then Burgerville. I'm sorry, but I really like Burgerville a lot.
There you go.
Yeah. Not that clever, but I'm thinking like Cab Franc. I mean, I love ice cream, but I'm not going to have that Cab Franc with ice cream. Maybe Spumoni, but that's a little weird. I don't know. That's a great stumped me.
I mean, I was, I'm not a nutritionist.
Right.
And I should probably pay a little bit more attention to my diet, but
No.
wherever my mind and my appetites wander is usually where I end up. So, you know, there might be a moment where I'm like, okay, I've just put jalapeno poppers in my cart. I didn't think I was going to do that.
Yeah, no judgment. Like that's a, like, you know, your clinical Western nutrition. Like I would teach my clients, like, don't give up the things you love because you'll never stick to the healthy diet. You need to like have a healthy relationship with it. It's about mindfulness. No, there's no judgment. I just can't think off the bat like what my crap is in my closet, you know, my pantry.
That's okay. That's okay. I love this. So, yeah, you guys are having a challenging time around these wildfires and this pandemic. And how as a business person are you able to kind of float through this? And I mean, look at this year that we're having. I mean, the weather's beautiful. I want to be like, yay, it's 80, but I'm like, oh no, it's going to be so bad if we get fires. So how do you prepare for this?
Well, you know, the beauty of making wine from Southern Oregon is it's not my first rodeo. I've been dealing with this since 2013. Right. So if anything, I think this is giving people from making wine from Southern Oregon a little bit more like street cred now, because for a long time, I think there's been sort of like this sort of, I don't want to use the word attitude, but like this kind of superior, no, that's not the right word. I'm just tired and I'm not giving the right word because I want to make very thoughtful about this. But there's been sort of this edge, if you will, about like Willamette Valley, where like they're untouchable, right? You know, like Pinot Noir, it's, you know, and maybe not untouchable because that's not the right word, but I think as far as wildfires are concerned, like the biggest issues in the Willamette Valley are if it rains too much and they're fighting off botrytis.
Right.
Right. Or birds or whatever. But it's, for a while it was treated like the smoke taint was like problem down south, and you know, like it almost felt like it's like we're a hot place and it's like that means your wines are hot and you're, you know, it just felt sort of like we're the stepchildren in the family. And all of a sudden, when global warming and climate change is making a statement that affects all of us, now everyone's sort of turned their ear and has an intention, and it's not so marginalized anymore. We're not pointing fingers at Southern Oregon like they're the ones with the problem. It's not going to go away. We know this. I mean, climate change, this is the new norm. Granted, they call the episode that happened the Labor Day weekend episode because literally we had a gorgeous Labor Day weekend. I was with friends at Willackenzie having a picnic into the evening, woke up and there were like, you know, light flashes of blue from transformers, and like there was this crazy wind episode that came in. It was very dry. It was like the perfect storm. It was like Wall, the movie, you know what I mean, except for the opposite, dry and fire. And all those the perfect storm of these variables were there to give us this just horrendous, you know, smoke wildfire situation, and it affected everyone. And unfortunately, it affected the Willamette Valley, this particular run, more than it did Southern Oregon, because we're talking about the timing of when this all happened. And so, but I want to be very clear. That doesn't mean that 2020 has ruined wine. I mean, in Oregon, in fact, the real pros, like the best winemakers, like the best wines, you're going to see some, like, without being cliche, Phoenix wines rising from these ashes. I mean, you're going to see some amazing wines coming out of this vintage. And I just want to encourage people to not look at a label and say 2020, I'm not going to support you. Like, if you have a favorite winery, continue to support them no matter what, because they showed up, they did it, they worked through it, and you trust and have a little faith in your favorite winemakers. So all that said is, you know, it's not going to go away. I'm sort of poised with it now. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with it because it is what it is, and it's been like this, like I said, since I've had to deal with it since 2013 in different iterations. And I've been I've just educated myself. I've read a lot of essays from UC Davis, from more, I think, long term from Australia, because they've had much more research supporting wildfires down there for a longer duration. But also there have been some other reports from Washington, but mostly it's California and Australia reports that I've been reading and following and researching, and I just kind of figured out. And honestly, I did that, but I mostly got most of my tutelage, if you will, from talking to winemakers.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that when this vintage was going on, I kept seeing on Facebook groups, there's a Oregon winemaker group that's, pretty insulated, but people were just like freaking out and like, what do we do? And they were just kept repeating, just research. And I kind of finally chimed in as like, how about you talk to some winemakers who actually made wine?
Yeah.
Like, stop freaking out over the research, because there's all kinds of ideas. And I'm not saying research isn't useful because it's not necessarily being conducted by people who are making the wine, but I'm saying talk to people who are making the wine, because if they've had experience in, more than 1 year going through these kinds of variables, they might be the kind of people you want to talk to.
For sure. Yeah.
So I did that. From 2013. I just educated myself and found people who I could reach out to and get some advice from. And from that, I kind of learned what to do and what not to do. So long story. Sorry, but
no, it's wonderful. I mean, it's perfectly natural. I can understand people, freaking out. It's, it's your livelihood. Like, we're not sitting on stacks and stacks of cash to run business. It's a cash flow intensive business, and you need to make wine, and sell wine. And when that gets interrupted too many times in a row, it really puts a hampering on what people want to do and the way they want to grow in the future. And but to take your point that, it brought it to the attention because it hit Willamette Valley, I'm hoping that has created some more cohesion within the industry, so that there is, better attention, and that you all can advocate together for each other better for whatever policies you might need, like regarding forestry and things like that, as an interface to help the industry as a whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a group called Oregon Wild, and every year they put out a report regarding our forests here in Oregon and wildfires in particular. And, most of the wildfires here are human error. I mean, there's only a handful that are actually from lightning and weather. And so, I think as an industry, I also served on a panel invited by Oregon State, as they were working on some of their own localized research on wildfires. And there were a few people from California on that panel as well, but it was mostly winemakers from Southern Oregon and growers as well. And they were looking at everything from the costs and what you have to mitigate, not only as a winemaker and in your product, and what is smoke taint, and what are the costs with that and against that. But then there's like legal ramifications, like, if someone pulls out and says, I don't want to buy your grapes because there's smoke taint, and what does that mean for the grower? What does that mean for the winemaker? Right. But then also health risks, like the vineyard workers who are going out in these vineyards when there's smoke everywhere and particulate matter that they're breathing in. So there's all these different variables that they're looking at, and risk, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was involved in that panel after, I think it was the Oregon Wine Symposium in 2020 or 2019, a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Southern Oregon for a long time has been the lone, group dealing with this. And like you said, having a more cohesive voice for the Oregon Wine Board in general is better all around for everybody. Because this is, let's be honest, I mean, we have seasons or vintages where the entire West Coast is on fire, the entire West Coast. It goes on to Canada. So, I mean, we really need to get more aggressive on our policies about climate change, obviously, but then also forest management. And, there's the federal side to that, of course. I've just laughed because I think you probably got my little laugh about that, about the previous president, but and his thoughts on that. But there's the federal side of forestry, forest management, and then of course what we have here in place of hiring people and really looking at the long-term effects of what happens when people are responsible, you know, when people are the ones, human error is driving this. Like, how are we addressing that to make this a safer place for people to live?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here. I just lost my train of thought. I really miss my old brain, the one that used to function really well.
In the middle of my sentences, I lose my brain, goes all the time.
Oh, I wanted to sing the praises of this wine because I really 2018 and 2019 in particular for the Cabernet Franc, I really liked how you know, your reference point is Loire, but
right.
there's like this concentration, and it's like a powerful Loire vintage, you know, and it's like nothing else. It's really like a singular set of flavors, but immediately recognizable as Cabernet Franc from someone who loves Cabernet Franc. And I don't know, I just I really dig it a lot, and I hope people open their bottles soon and taste it now, but then also squirrel some away because it's really fantastic after a few years.
If I may, thank you so much. If I may, because you made a really good point. You know, when I used the term Loire again initially on this wine back in 2011, the thought behind it was, if I'm making an Oregon Cab Franc and no one really knows what that means. And so just like the Willamette Valley is not Burgundy, we can make references and we can find similarities, but you know, we all know Oregon Pinot Noir is Oregon Pinot Noir. It's its own thing. It just took years for it to get that recognition and that the characteristics people recognize in the glass, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's uniquely Oregon. Distinguishable is the word I was looking for. But with Cab Franc, I mean, I'm not the first person to make Cab Franc in Oregon. You know, plenty of people have been doing it, growing it mostly for blending, of course, doing Meritage Bordeaux blend style winemaking. But I love the wines from the Loire, and I knew that Oregon and Southern Oregon in particular is not the Loire Valley. But where I made connections is, for example, Crater View Ranch, which is one of the main vineyards that I work with. They've got ancient marine shellfish, all kinds of ancient fossils and ocean bottom material from a subduction that happened 250 million years ago. And you can see the deposits and where there was limestone. And it's really the only authentic place in Oregon that had legitimate limestone. There'll be people who say there's limestone in the Willamette Valley. It is so minor, and it's the lowest grade of limestone possible. I did research on historical Oregon, and when Oregon was becoming a state, they were bringing in all kinds of authorities to evaluate what our natural resources were so that they could, A, create jobs, and B, you know, get some money for the state. And so they had quarries, and they were looking at obviously trees and forestry and fishing and fisheries, but limestone was huge in Southern Oregon. And there was like a fan basically like in Josephine County and down in the Rogue, not far from where I'm getting my fruit, that was loaded with limestone. And you can make these connections again to the subduction that happened 250 million years ago that, you know, pushed ocean bottom material as far as the Cascade Range. And that's important because having these sort of fascinating ancient ocean bottom material deposits in part of the vineyards that I'm working with, along with the fact that the valley floor starts in Southern Oregon at 900-foot elevation. So we're talking about some really high slopes, like up to 1,600 to 2,200 feet elevation. It's a totally different landscape now down there compared to, like, if I'm to to compare with the Willamette Valley. Like the
Yeah.
Willamette Valley has their Missoula floods story for geology, but Southern Oregon, and in particular, the Rogue Valley has this subduction story that's really essential. So again, not the Loire Valley, but we can make some connections with these ocean bottom. Like I have, pictures of mollusk shells and other really cool ocean bottom blue schist rocks here and on my Instagram and on my website. Well, I don't know if it's on my website right now, but on my Instagram and Facebook, so people can actually see what this looks like. So yes, Cab Franc, yes, Loire style, but no, it's my hope is that in 10 years, people will drink my wine and be like, that is Oregon Cab Franc.
No, there's no doubt. You're well on your way.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it doesn't have any of the like sappiness that some wines do when they're kind of grown in warmer climates. That it's really, really got great cut and like freshness to it too. I really enjoy that. I can hear that.
Excuse me for a second. I'm just gonna say something real quick.
Yeah.
Do you think he can go outside? Is Asa here?
Oh.
Yeah. Can you bring him outside? I can't hear any of the questions. Thanks.
Sorry. Oh no, that's okay. That's okay.
I just can't.
We can wrap it up.
Oh, it's okay. My husband's home.
Okay. Beautiful. Ace is home.
Yeah.
Well, if there's anything else that I can, turn over to you and have you talk about with our listeners, please feel free to go ahead, because I don't know what's going on in your world and what might be coming up. You've mentioned the tasting room, for folks who have just joined, like she's going to be welcoming guests to, a very small booking only style tasting in Newburgh. So some really cool library releases and fun things ahead this summer after Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And hopefully just, we're like everyone else riding the wave of what the state is mandating, what's safe to do. We would love to fill up our Friday, Saturday, and Sundays with, our separated tastings, but it really just depends on how we move forward. And I'm an optimist. I feel like I keep hearing people say once everyone's vaccinated that by June, end of June or early July, we should be in a different situation. And I'm just hopeful for that, for everybody, not just for ourselves. I mean, if I come from the philosophy, if I do great, like I want everyone else to do great, or vice versa. Like I feel like if we thrive, then we all thrive, right? So that's just my hope for all the restaurants and all the wineries. I mean, of course, all those essential businesses that have been fully operational throughout all of this. I mean, much gratitude to them, but really all the restaurants that have suffered through this. I mean, it's been heartbreaking. I've had some of my favorite restaurants shut down in Portland, and I'm not over it. Like I'm emotionally, it was traumatic. It was very sad to see such out of our hands, like, restaurants and businesses that just it's totally out of their hands, and that's a really hard pill to swallow. So I'm just very hopeful that as we move forward as a community and as a state and as a nation, that we can and the world, that we can continue to just be cognizant of others around us and more respectful of our general health, not take things for granted. I worked in a wine bar for many years at Corkscrew Wine Bar. Shout out to Corkscrew.
Yeah.
Elwood. But I worked in that wine bar for, several years, and often I would work my shifts by myself. And so I was handling things. I was always getting, colds working in service. And so people don't realize that people who work in service you don't get to wash your hands every 5 minutes, you know what I mean? You are putting yourself on the line in any normal year. So I hope that this makes people really think about how they are about like not going out in public when you're sick. Like let's just be a caring society. Let's just think a little bit more about what we're doing, and hopefully as we move forward, that attitude and that kind of safety and just kindness is what will continue. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. It does seem like we're moving in a positive direction. I'm seeing friends, and everybody in my world posting their second vaccine photographs and things like that. So, and I think that as people observe their loved ones getting vaccinated, that things will be more enticing for that to spread, because
Yeah.
it really seems at this point that like the state's interventions, while necessary originally, are kind of just crippling businesses at this point, when the people who aren't going to listen are not going to listen regardless, until it's the carrot instead of the stick that entices them to maybe reconsider.
Agreed. Yeah.
So. Yeah, they're not going to get any of this good wine if they don't mask up and get a vaccine. You're not going to welcome them to the tasting. Maybe you will, because you're outside. I don't know. I mean, it puts everybody in a bad position to try to, boss people around and tell them how they have to, do or not do in order to engage with your business. That's not something that people in service are comfortable doing. We bend over backwards to accommodate everybody, but, I think that, we've had an opportunity in the pandemic to maybe step back and say, maybe I should draw a little stricter boundary.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I came out of the experience really recognizing my own boundaries for sure, like, and what's healthy boundaries. And even just talking to my direct sales manager, Shannon, like when we were trying to figure out when and how to bring people in, I was like, well, just keep in mind, this is my home. This is my home. And so she was 100% like, yeah, this is home. So I was very nervous about it. And I mean, she's great. But I'm very protective of her. I don't want her to be exposed to anything.
Mm-hmm.
My boundary is not just my boundary. My boundary is her boundary too. So I'm very protective of her so that she's not putting herself in any precarious situation either. I think it's really good to have house rules, period.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of doors in businesses that say no mask, no entry. And like, yeah, perfect. I mean, I don't disagree with that. And if people have a problem with that, then just kind of move on. I don't know what else to say, but I don't think it's people in even in the anxiety space, you know what I mean? Whether they're going to get sick or not, whatever, but even just putting them in a place of potential anxiety over it, it's not worth it.
Yeah. I just saw a comment come through a little while ago about the release of the Cabernet Franc Blanc. So that's been released already.
15th, and I think that was Shannon. I think May 15th. Yeah, we're gonna release that. It's our 10th anniversary wine, vintage, I should say.
Got it.
That wine. Mm-hmm. She has a mask for 2020.
Got it.
Yeah. That was the reality, right? I wanted to be very true to that vintage and true to the story. In 2020, we were wearing masks the whole time during harvest and still are, but so we put a mask on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah. I love all the changes. Well, I really appreciate your taking the time out from your busy schedule as a business owner and as a mom to beautiful boy. If there's anything else you want to mention, please feel free to do so right now. And otherwise, we'll turn you back to your family.
I would just like to say thank you very much to you and for your kind and generous support. It's businesses like you that I love to work with. And I'm just thrilled when someone opens up the bottle and finds it like to be something that they want to share with their customers. So I'm honored for that. So thank you.
Yeah. It's an absolute pleasure. We have an amazingly supportive set of customers who've stuck with us throughout the pandemic and through the transition to doing everything online. Mm-hmm. And so we're feeling very lucky.
I'm happy.
Well, thank you, Leah. I really appreciate it. I look forward to connecting with you in person.
Me too.
At some point soon, and we'll keep everybody plugged in on what's happening. So
thank you so much. Take care, and thank you everyone for joining us.
You bet. Have a good one. Oh. I know. My husband and son just crept in. He just slipped by.
We both got bombed. I love it.
Yep, it happens. All right. Thank you, Leah. Thanks everybody for joining. Bye-bye.